Great. Here's the emotional story script based on your title. Title: A little girl gave her only cookie to a sad stranger. She had no idea who he really was. Chapter 1: The Cookie and the Stranger, 5,000-word plain paragraph. Have you ever done something so small, so simple, and yet it changed everything? That's what this story is about. And the moment you hear it, you'll understand why the smallest act of kindness, like giving away a single cookie, can echo louder than 1,000 grand gestures. Stay with us till the end, because what starts as an ordinary day for a little girl turns into something so unexpected, so moving, you'll remember it long after you've watched. In a quiet corner of a small town, 8-year-old Emma clutched a slightly crumpled napkin in her tiny hands. Inside was her most prized possession of the day, a single, chocolate chip cookie wrapped with care by her mother that morning. It was meant to be her treat for doing well in school, and Emma had been thinking about it all day. She wasn't a child of wealth. In fact, Emma and her mother lived in a small one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. Her mother worked long shifts at a diner, and treats like this cookie didn't come often. But to Emma, life was still full of little wonders: pigeons on the windowsill, chalk drawings on sidewalks, the way sunbeams made dust look like stars. She walked home slowly, imagining how the cookie would taste, how she'd save half for her mom even though she secretly hoped her mom would say, "No, baby, it's yours. You enjoy it." The street was unusually quiet that afternoon. Wind danced through the leaves, and clouds passed lazily overhead. That's when she saw him. Sitting alone on a cold bench near the playground, a man in a long coat, his shoulders slumped, his eyes staring at the ground like the world had forgotten him. He looked lost. Not just physically, but in that deep way where someone forgets what hope feels like. Emma paused. Children are naturally observant in ways adults forget to be. She could tell he hadn't eaten. His clothes looked worn but not ragged, his shoes were mismatched, and he clutched an old photo in his hand, a worn black and white picture of a woman and child. Her heart beat a little faster. Not from fear, but from something else. An invisible thread of empathy pulled her closer. She had seen enough sadness in her young life to recognize it in someone else. The man didn't notice her at first. She walked slowly to the bench and sat at the opposite end, legs swinging freely, eyes glancing toward the cookie in her lap. "Hi," she said softly. The man looked up, startled. His eyes were red, not from tears alone but from tiredness, the kind that makes your soul ache. "Hello," he replied, unsure whether to speak further. Emma looked at her cookie. Then back at him. Without saying another word, she unwrapped the napkin and held it out. "You can have this," she said, holding the cookie toward him. "It's really good. My mom made it." The man blinked. No one had given him anything in weeks. Let alone something that mattered to them. He looked at the cookie, then at the little girl's eyes. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to say, "No, sweetie, that's yours." But something inside him cracked open, a dam of grief, of silence, of being invisible for too long. His hand trembled slightly as he took the cookie. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're very kind." Emma smiled. "My name's Emma. What's yours?" The man hesitated. Then answered, "David." She nodded like she'd just met an old friend. They sat in silence for a while. Birds chirped in the trees, and the sky began to blush with the colors of evening. Emma didn't ask questions. She didn't pry. But before she left, she turned back to him and said, "You don't look like a bad person. Just sad. But you'll be okay, I think." Then she skipped away. David sat on that bench long after the sun had set. He didn't eat the cookie right away. He just held it, like it was the last real proof that goodness still existed in the world. What Emma didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was who David really was. And what he'd been running from. Or to. That tiny cookie was more than food. It was hope wrapped in kindness. And it would soon lead to something no one could have predicted. Not even Emma. If this story is touching your heart, hold on tight, because 3 days had passed since the little girl with the bright eyes and cookie-bright smile had offered him her only treat. David hadn't forgotten her. In fact, he couldn't. Her words echoed louder in his head than any sermon, louder than any police siren, louder than the guilt that had gnawed at his soul for the past 7 years. Because the truth was, David wasn't just a man who had fallen on hard times. He was a man who had once had it all. A home, a family, a job as a paramedic, until the day it all fell apart. A car crash on an icy road. One wrong call, one delayed moment of action, and he lost both his wife and daughter before he could reach the hospital. The grief crushed him. Not just the loss, but the guilt. He stopped working. Stopped eating. Stopped believing he deserved anything. He disappeared from his life, from everyone, punishing himself in silence. He lived like a ghost among the living. But something in Emma's innocent gesture had stirred a part of him that had long been dead. He ate the cookie on the third night. Not because he was hungry, but because he finally wanted to feel something sweet again. And when he did, he cried. Not because of the cookie, but because someone, some tiny stranger, had treated him like a person again. And that's when he made a decision. He would find her. Not to take anything from her, but to give something back. He asked around. Described her to the park vendors, the school crossing guard, even the old men who fed birds in the square. It took 3 more days, but finally someone said, "Emma. Oh yeah, that sweet kid lives above the laundromat on 6th Street. David stood across from the building, unsure what he would say, how he'd say it. He had nothing to offer. Nothing but a thank you and maybe a story. But then he saw her mother coming down the steps, holding Emma's hand, tired eyes but a warm smile as she listened to Emma chatter about school. David froze. His breath caught. Because he recognized her. Not from real life, but from the photo in his pocket. Emma's mother. She was the girl in the picture. His daughter's best friend from childhood. The one who had moved away years ago after his wife and child died. He approached slowly, nervously. "Excuse me," he said. Emma turned first. "David," she said, running up to him with a smile. "You look better." Her mother looked startled. "Emma, do you know this man?" David took off his cap, his voice shaky. "I think you might know me too." I was Leah's husband. My name's David Whitmore." Her eyes widened. Her knees almost gave way. "David. My God. They said you disappeared." He nodded. "I did. For a long time. But your daughter found me. Gave me something I hadn't had in years. Compassion." They talked for hours. Not just about the past, but the pain, the healing, the strange, miraculous thread that had led them here. Emma listened quietly, hugging her knees. She didn't understand all the words, but she felt the hugeness of the moment. David didn't move in. He didn't become their savior or their burden. But he started living again. Volunteering at the community clinic. Fixing up a room in a local shelter. Slowly, he found purpose. And every week, he brought Emma a new cookie, different kinds each time. One day, he told her, "I'll teach you how to bake your own." She beamed. Not because of the cookies, but because she had helped someone find their way home. Not everyone gets to be a hero. But sometimes, being kind when no one's watching is the most heroic thing you can do. Emma didn't know that her small act had saved a life. But maybe now you do. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you see someone who looks like the world forgot them, you'll remember this story. If this touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that prove humanity is still alive. Because sometimes, a cookie isn't just a cookie, it's a second chance in disguise. Would you like this in a downloadable format or want me to help you turn it into a voiceover script next? What if I told you that a single act of kindness doesn't just change one life, but ripples across generations, neighborhoods, and even strangers who never meet the person who started it all? You followed Emma's journey, the little girl with a big heart who gave her only cookie to a sad stranger in the park. You met David, a man who had disappeared inside his grief and found the first flicker of hope through a child's compassion. But what if I told you that wasn't the end of the story? That their encounter wasn't just coincidence, but the beginning of something even bigger, something that would go on to affect dozens of lives, all because one child didn't walk past a sad face. 6 months later, the neighborhood around Emma's apartment felt different. warmer. The bakery that once sat quietly at the corner now bustled every Saturday morning. Why? Because David had started working there part-time, and every Saturday, he offered a special cookie called Emma's Hope. It was made from the same recipe Emma's mom had used the day she baked her daughter that special cookie, the one she never got to eat. And next to the display case, a small sign stood, "These cookies saved a life, $1 goes to help people starting over." No fancy words. No over-explaining. But people started asking questions. And when David shared the story, carefully, humbly, always focusing on Emma, customers wept. Some even started leaving more than $1. Some left letters. Some left names. The manager, Mr. Patel, noticed. "What's going on with these cookies?" he asked one day, smiling as the jar of donations overflowed. David smiled back. "They're more than cookies," he said. "They're reminders that people are still good." But even that wasn't the biggest change. One day, a teenage boy named Jordan walked into the bakery. He had a bruised face, a black hoodie, and an empty expression. He didn't say much. Just stared at the tray of cookies. David noticed the way his eyes lingered. "Want to try one?" David asked. "No charge." Jordan looked up, surprised. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to," David said. "Someone gave me a cookie once. Changed my whole life. Maybe it's your turn." Jordan slowly took one. Sat in the corner. Ate silently. Then left. A week later, he came back. "Got any work?" he asked, mumbling. David blinked. "Can you mop floors?" Jordan nodded. "Good," David said. "Start now." Jordan didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of his second chance. Over the next months, Jordan began to open up. He'd been in trouble before. Skipped school. Fought with his stepdad. Hung out with the wrong crowd. But something about the bakery felt safe. And more than that, someone believed in him. David didn't lecture him. He didn't try to save him. He just listened. Gave him cookies. Paid him fairly. Told him stories about a little girl named Emma. "You ever meet her?" Jordan asked one day. "No," David said. "She doesn't even know all this is happening. But maybe one day, you'll meet her too." Meanwhile, Emma was growing. She didn't know it, but her name had become something of a legend. Teachers at her school began telling the story of the girl who gave her only cookie to a stranger. It became a lesson about kindness. Her classmates started doing small good deeds. Sharing lunches, helping each other with homework, standing up for bullied kids. All because of a story. One story. Claire, Emma's mom, was watching all of it with awe. David had become like family. Not a replacement. Not a fixer. Just someone who showed up. Every week. With cookies. With laughter. With healing. One evening, as they all sat around the table, Emma helping stir a batch of batter, Jordan chopping walnuts, Claire sipping tea, David smiled and said, "You know, we should write a book one day." "About cookies?" Emma asked, laughing. "About kindness," David replied. "About how you saved me." Claire looked up. "You saved yourself, David. Emma just gave you a reason to try." That night, Jordan stayed late to clean up. As he mopped, he looked at the framed napkin on the wall, the same one David had saved since that day in the park. He stared at it for a long time. "I think I get it now," he said. David raised an eyebrow. "Get what?" "Why you do all this," Jordan said. It wasn't about the cookie. It was about the feeling behind it. Like, someone saw you when you thought no one could. David nodded slowly. "Exactly." Jordan said nothing more. But that weekend, he wrote a letter to his mother, someone he hadn't spoken to in over a year. He didn't know if she'd write back. But he mailed it anyway. Across town, an elderly woman named Mrs. Fisher had heard about the story too. She was lonely, widowed, and spent most of her time inside. But one day she decided to visit the bakery. When she walked in, David greeted her like an old friend. "Would you like a cookie?" he asked. "I'd like a story," she said. So he gave her both. And she cried. And came back every Wednesday after that. It became her new tradition. She even started knitting hats for local kids and leaving them by the bakery door. A little sign beside them read, "Kindness is free, take what you need." The ripple kept growing. A radio host picked up the story. Then a local journalist. Before long, national media called it the cookie kindness movement. But to Emma, it was still just the day she gave a cookie to someone who looked sad. And maybe that's the best part of the story. She didn't do it for attention. She didn't know who he was. She just knew he needed it. One small moment. One big change. And when Emma turned 10, David surprised her with a book he'd published himself. It was called Emma's Cookie. The cover had a simple drawing, a park bench, a little girl's hand, and a single cookie. The dedication read, "To the girl who gave without knowing, and in doing so, gave everything." Emma cried when she read it. Not because it was about her, but because it reminded her that anyone could do something kind. And so she made a promise. One day, she said, "I'm gonna open a place where people come for cookies and leave with smiles." And David, wiping a tear from his cheek, whispered, "You already have." So here's what we want to leave you with. Never underestimate a small act. Never assume your kindness is wasted. That stranger you helped today could be someone who goes on to help thousands more. Be like Emma. Be the one who gives when no one's watching. Because when one little girl gave her only cookie to a sad stranger, she had no idea he used to save lives, and would go on to save even more because of her. If this story warmed your heart, inspired your soul, or simply reminded you that there's still good in the world, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. We've got more powerful, emotional stories that prove humanity is still beautiful. And if you believe kindness matters, share this story with someone today. You never know how far the ripple might go. Thank you for being part of it.